My intentions were never to take his life.
Your Honor, I beg you. I've never been in trouble. I'm not going to harm anybody.
If I could go back time, I would bring her back in a heartbeat.
I think there's a lot of good things I can do with my life if you allow me to keep my life.
A former East Cleveland police officer appeared in court to request that the judge refrain from sentencing him to prison.
Your Honor, I beg you. I've never been in trouble. I'm not going to harm anybody.
Brian Parks pleaded guilty to assaulting a handcuffed man and attempting to tamper with records. He appeared before a judge today for sentencing. Brian Parks had hoped his plea would be enough to convince the judge to sentence him to probation. However, the judge ultimately decided to send Parks to prison, emphasizing the need to hold him accountable for his actions and to send a message to the community. In court, Parks remained expressionless as prosecutors played body camera footage showing him assaulting a handcuffed man. The incident occurred after an October 2021 police chase, during which the driver refused to stop for speeding and a possible window tint violation. While still handcuffed, prosecutors revealed that the man was slammed into the back of a police cruiser by Parks. Mario Garcia, the driver involved in the incident, expressed his outrage in court. He described being appalled by what happened.
I forgive you. I'm telling you I forgive you, but I'm not going to forget this.
Parks took responsibility for the assault.
It was dark, it was cold, and he fled from the police. We were in a corner alley. I couldn't see anything.
Prosecutors stated that Parks attempted to cover up his actions by falsely claiming in reports that Garcia was handcuffed only after the chase.
And what we have here, Your Honor, is a grave abuse of power.
Parks' attorney argued that her client was caught up in the moment and referenced a 2019 incident where Parks, while on duty, shot and killed a man.
It's the things that he witnessed and that he went through in his capacity as a police officer that caused him the post-traumatic stress disorder and the other mental health issues that he has that led to this offense.
The victim and prosecutors urged Judge Cassandra Collier-Williams to sentence Parks to prison.
But I'm just looking at this and I'm like, I did my time. He should be held to a higher standard.
The judge agreed, sentencing Parks, who had served the community for 17 years, to 6 months in prison. Parks was led from the courtroom in handcuffs. He became the 7th current or former East Cleveland police officer convicted of a crime. In court, Parks' wife accused prosecutors of sacrificing her husband's career for political gain during an election year. Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Michael O'Malley responded, stating that his prosecutors simply did their job, emphasizing that the reason Parks is going to prison is clear from the body camera footage. A woman who killed a mother of 5 is refusing to answer questions before learning about her impending prison sentence. The story is sensitive and includes audio of a gunshot. There were few dry eyes in the courtroom as the loved ones of both the victim and the defendant were present. This case illustrates how the decision to grab a gun during a fight has profoundly impacted many lives, including those of 5 children who are now without their mother.
Cries every night. Every night. In the middle of the night, she screams.
The youngest of Jamie Chase's 5 children is only 5 years old.
Her kids are her main priority. She loves her kids, and her kids love her.
Jamie Chase's loved ones held photos of her children in court as they sought justice.
Many lives were shattered forever. I'm sorry.
This was the moment when many lives were changed forever. 1 year ago, Jamie Chase went to Kaiwi Brewer's home to confront her after Brewer gave Chase's son a ride to school without permission. An argument ensued, and as Chase walked back to her car, Brewer retrieved her gun. Chaos erupted as the dogs jumped, and in the midst of it all, Brewer shot and killed Chase. Brewer had a permit to carry a concealed weapon and no prior criminal record.
If I could go back time, I would bring her back in a heartbeat.
Kaiwi Brewer was initially arrested for murder, but later pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter.
I do not think that you are a bad person. I don't think that you are a monster, but I think you made some really poor decisions that day.
She sentenced Kaiwi Brewer to 3 to 8 years in prison.
Just seeing her let out in handcuffs reaffirms a little bit of justice in the judicial system.
He expressed disagreement with the plea deal, but remains hopeful that it can provide some closure, particularly for his 5 grandchildren, whom he is now raising.
What do you tell them when you get home now?
Justice was served. The monster that took your mother away will be away for a long time.
Up until the sentencing, Brewer had spent only 13 days in jail. Probation is a possibility for the charge of voluntary manslaughter with the use of a deadly weapon. However, while Kaiwi Brewer's attorney advocated for probation, the judge stated that she did not believe probation was appropriate in this case. Austin Myers and Timothy Mosley were both convicted of murdering 18-year-old Justin back in Waynesville, Ohio. The two men went to Back's house intending to steal a safe that belonged to his father. During the robbery, Justin Back was tragically strangled with a choke wire.
The idea of strangling them, that way it would create no mess, pretty much be an easier job to handle. Obviously, Justin was trying to put up a fight, and he wasn't overpowering us.
Justin Back was then stabbed 21 times, resulting in his death.
Justin was trying to ask us why. He was pleading to stop and pretty much begging for his life.
During the trial, Mosley testified against Myers in exchange for a plea deal, which resulted in a life sentence. Myers then took the stand, pleading with the jury to spare his life for the sake of his family to avoid the death penalty.
If you choose for me to die, it's only going to cause more pain and suffering for another family, not me. It won't hurt me. I won't feel anything. It's going to hurt more innocent people.
Justin Back's father is now speaking.
I'm not going to stand up here and tell you how much I hate you. That is without question. I would just hope that every time you close your eyes at night, you see my son, Justin.
After the jury recommended the death sentence, this was Myers' final opportunity to plead for his life before the judge.
I think there's a lot of good things I can do with my life if you allow me to keep my life.
The judge was not convinced and imposed the maximum sentence.
The defendant does not understand how precious life is. Therefore, the sentence of death shall be imposed upon Austin Gregory Myers on the charge of aggravated murder.
With just a slight nod, Myers, at only 19 years old, became the youngest person on death row in Ohio.
There were so many lives destroyed by this, and it was just for nothing. I mean, there was no money in the safe. There was nothing in there. They did this for basically nothing.
He is currently awaiting his execution at Chillicothe Correctional Institution. A woman convicted for her involvement in the rape, torture, and murders of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom will remain in prison. The parole board denied Vanessa Coleman parole. The victim's parents passionately urged the board during the hearing not to allow Coleman to be released. Nearly 14 years and more than 350 court appearances later, the families of Christian and Newsom still become emotional when discussing the murders of their children.
Just 1 month, it will be 14 years since I have first realized that I will never dance with my daughter.
Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom were on a date in January 2007 when they were carjacked, kidnapped, raped, and murdered. The lead investigator in the case stated that evidence indicates Vanessa Coleman was involved in every aspect of the crime except for the carjacking. However, Coleman denies this claim.
There's no way she could not have heard what was going on in there, that little bitty house with no door.
Coleman requested the parole board for her release.
I didn't speak up, I didn't stand up, and I didn't help when someone needed me the most in their life. And for that, I'm sorry.
Her emotions swayed no one, and she was unanimously denied parole. Several board members remarked that this case was among the most heinous they had ever reviewed, and that Coleman should continue to serve her sentence.
And it appears that she is going through some amount of rehabilitation. It just does not erase the fact of what she didn't do.
She expressed regret, stating that she didn't help save their lives. Coleman will be eligible for parole again in 2030. A jury swiftly delivered justice, taking less than half an hour to find a teen guilty of second-degree murder in the road rage, beating death of 64-year-old grandfather William McFarland. The case first emerged last fall in Caledonia Township. 19-year-old Christian Hillman never denied that he beat McFarland to death in a parking lot in September. Still, his defense hoped the jury would view it as a response to provocation and convict him of manslaughter instead. Those hopes were quickly dashed.
This is a fight between two people, between Christian, who was being tailgated and shoved off the road by this vehicle, and then gets into a fight with that person.
Defense attorney Michael Bardish stated that McFarland followed Hillman into the parking lot, but argued that the encounter was entirely one-sided.
This is a man who got punched, choked, slammed to the ground on pavement, and we have nothing. Zero. Zilch. This isn't a fight. This is just a beatdown.
The evidence of significant injuries was supported by the defendant's statements during a police interview conducted hours after the assault. After the verdict, we spoke with the man who prosecuted the case.
They saw that he was a bit flippant about what he was doing, and in some ways may have enjoyed it. I think it's an image Christian was creating. I think he was trying to build himself to be a certain person, and that was the person he was trying to build.
The victim's son stated that he and his family do not harbor hatred in their hearts for the teen, but he found the defense's arguments to be absurd, to say the least.
What do you want people to remember about your dad? I know this is all about Christian Hellman, but what do you want people to know in the end about your dad?
My dad was a kind, loving man.
So this is not a guy who's going around picking fights with 19-year-old kids?
No. It was a little struggle for him to get around. So yeah, he's not, he wasn't going to go beat up some kid. He was nice. He was kind. He would help. I mean, if we were all like that, we wouldn't be in this situation.
The teen is currently in jail until his sentencing. He will likely be closer to middle age before he has a chance at freedom. The suspect, identified as a Venezuelan migrant, has been arraigned after allegedly shooting 2 officers when they attempted to pull him over for driving the wrong way. However, prosecutors state that his criminal activities extend far beyond this single incident. This individual entered the country illegally a year ago and has been arraigned on multiple charges, including 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder. He previously lived at a shelter off Ditmars Boulevard, but claimed he was kicked out. In a shocking confession to authorities, he revealed that he is a member of the violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, which he stated is involved in smuggling firearms into migrant shelters. Bernardo Raul Castro Mata, the 19-year-old Venezuelan migrant who shot the 2 police officers earlier this month, faced a judge. He arrived in a wheelchair and did not speak. Still, prosecutors say he provided detailed statements to investigators, revealing alarming information about that night and his activities since arriving in New York City. He told police that he worked for DoorDash and received the gun he used to shoot the officers from a friend.
Last night, I was coming home from work. I was in a car with my friend, and my friend, Jose Maita, gave me a bag with a gun in it and asked me to keep it for him.
The suspect admitted to being a member of the notorious Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, according to audio recordings presented by prosecutors. Mata claims he was recruited by a cousin to join the gang to commit robberies. However, the most alarming revelation is that the gang has been smuggling guns into city-run shelters.
Tren de Aragua members are smuggling firearms into city shelters inside food delivery packages. That way they'll have to go through the metal detector.
On June 3rd, 2 NYPD officers attempted to pull him over for driving an unregistered scooter the wrong way on a one-way street in East Elmhurst. When the police tried to stop him, Mata fled on foot. The officers pursued him, and when they caught up, he resisted arrest. Mata allegedly fired at both officers, hitting Officer Christopher Abro in the leg and shooting Officer Richard Giarusso point blank in front of his bulletproof vest. In court, the assistant district attorney mentioned that Mata also claimed that shooting at police officers is a common practice in his home country.
It is common practice for Tren de Aragua gang members to shoot at police officers because Venezuelan police officers shoot at gang members for minor infractions. Venezuelan police officers get shot often in my home country because criminals feel there is a chance of getting away.
He was once again held without bail.
This dangerous individual wasn't afraid to shoot a New York City police officer because he thought he was going to get away with it. Not in this country.
Mata pleaded not guilty to all the charges. After he provided information about his gang, his attorney requested that the judge place him in protective custody, and the judge granted that request. A hearing was held for a teenager accused of shooting killing a boy who was caught in the crossfire outside his home. This was the teen's first hearing. Though he did not appear in person, several of his family members attended. After reviewing the affidavit, the judge determined there was sufficient probable cause to keep him in custody. 18-year-old Ernest Rowell later appeared in bond court.
I gotta call my mom and see if they gonna give me a look.
Ernest Rowell's mother appeared on his behalf at the juvenile courthouse. His attorney waived Rowell's right to appear before the judge for the hearing.
Raise your right hand to be sworn.
Ernest Rowell is being charged in connection with the death of Marlon Eason, who was tragically shot in the head while playing basketball outside his home.
Never forget him. I'll never forget him. When we still hurting, that boy was real special to us.
4.5 months after the shooting, Miami police arrested Khalib Newkirk and Ernest Rowell. According to the arrest affidavit, Marlon's mother had, at one point, contacted the suspects. The documents indicate that the suspects admitted to their involvement in the incident. Records reveal that the boys claimed they were aiming for a rival gang member's car, not Marlon's.
The nature of the allegations set forth in the affidavit is sufficient for this court to keep him in secure detention. He'll remain in secure detention at this time.
Rowell, who was 17 at the time of the shooting, will remain at the juvenile detention center while awaiting his next hearing. His mother and several family members who were present in court left without making any comments. The state will now investigate the case to decide whether to file formal charges. If charges are filed, they will then determine whether to prosecute him as a juvenile or an adult. The next hearing has been scheduled. This case involves one of the most dramatic and shocking reactions to a court ruling. Michael Marin, a former Wall Street trader, was found guilty of intentionally setting fire to his $3.5 million mansion in the Phoenix area in 2009. Marin emerged from the burning house wearing scuba gear in a bizarre twist. Investigators later discovered he had set the fire because he could not keep up with the mortgage payments. Before the fire, Marin had attempted to sell the house through a lottery, but the effort was shut down after being deemed illegal.
Juror number 5, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 9, is this your true verdict?
When Michael Marin was found guilty of arson and insurance fraud in June 2012, facing a prison sentence of 7 to 21 years, his reaction was both dramatic and tragic. During the court proceedings, he put his head in his hands, placed something in his mouth, drank from a sports bottle, and shortly after began convulsing. Despite attempts to save him, Marin collapsed in court and could not be revived. According to the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's Office, Marin had poison in his system, and it appears he took cyanide before his death. Investigators later discovered that Marin had purchased a cyanide canister in 2011 from a California mail-order chemical supplier. 5 years after his arrest for a violent armed robbery, Reginald Brown has agreed to a plea deal. He is now cooperating with prosecutors in their case against his co-defendant, Darren Gibson.
Can tell the court we have set depots for Mr. Brown. That is on the 21st of February.
Prosecutors say that in 2017, Reginald Brown and Darren Gibson participated in an armed robbery at a home on Baptist Church Road in Tampa, where they held 8 people at gunpoint. One victim was shot in the head, but survived. Years later, Brown agreed to a deal and cooperated with prosecutors, potentially becoming the key witness in Gibson's upcoming trial.
It's set May 16th, that's the jury pick, Tuesday. It runs Tuesday to Monday.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Brown left the courtroom and is scheduled to meet with prosecutors next month, where he will testify under oath and shift most of the blame onto his former partner, Darren Gibson. Defendant Darrell Felton Jr. spoke before being sentenced after pleading guilty to a charge of manslaughter for the shooting death of Michael Underwood III in July 2021 at the Kalamazoo County Courthouse in Kalamazoo, Michigan. According to court documents, the killing arose from a custody dispute between Felton and his ex-girlfriend, Everlyn Cano.
July 24, 2021 was just a normal weekend with my son and my girlfriend. I woke up and made my family breakfast. And we had planned a fun day to look forward to. Now it's a day that I will never forget. would have never imagined standing here today. But the fact is, Michael Underwood is not here with us. I am genuinely sorry from the bottom of my heart. My intentions were never to take his life. I only wanted to protect not only myself, but the lecturer as well. I honestly was in fear of my life. I suffered an accident a year prior and was highly advised that any head trauma could end my life. There were many normal everyday things that I shied away from, like play fighting with my son, who was 4 at the time. I've never been in a fight in my life, nor been aggressive with anyone. I am a man of integrity. I am a man with extremely high moral compass. I treat people with honor, respect, love, and compassion. Most importantly, I'm a man of God. I am very soft-spoken. I mainly stick to myself. I will give the shirt off my back to someone in need. A lecturer and I, on day nights, we would normally purchase food for the homeless and also people struggling with addiction. I am not perfect, nowhere close, but I can wholeheartedly say I am a great father. I am a great son. I am a great brother. I'm a great uncle. I am a great nephew. I am a great cousin. And I am a great friend. I've always taken pride in the relationship that I developed with my son. The love and the lessons that I learned from him are priceless. And I hope to get back to him as soon as I can. To Michael's family, friends, and loved ones, I send my deepest condolences to you all. I will forever keep you all in my prayers, and I hope you can forgive me. I pray that you understand that my heart is pure. I pray that you understand that my heart is pure. And I also pray that you all receive peace. To the Honorable Judge, Camilo Lago, thank you. Thank you for listening. And I respectfully ask that you take these words into consideration.
Felton was sentenced to 7 to 15 years for the incident in Kalamazoo Township. On August 6, 2021, in Oconto, Alicia Koken broke the law by shooting Officer Nicole Blaskowski. Now, the court is prepared to set clear consequences for her actions. When given a chance to speak, Koken's tearful eyes and remorseful words filled the courtroom, but no apology could ever make up for almost taking the life of the innocent on-duty officer.
First and foremost, I'd like to apologize to the courts, county, and police force of Oconto Falls. I deeply regret my actions that led us here today. I'm truly sorry, Officer Nicole Blaskowski. I can't imagine the effects my actions have had on you and how they will continue to affect your life. I've dealt with mental illness most of my life. I've been misdiagnosed, over-medicated, under-medicated, and have had many mental breaks throughout my life. Honestly, don't recall all the events that got me here today. I'm sorry. I'm accepting responsibility for my actions. If I could go back and change them, I would. I'd like you to consider the Wisconsin Resource Center so I can get the help I need. I plan to take full advantage of any and all programming that will help in making me a better person. I'd like to become a better mother, sister, and daughter to my family. I'm sorry to everyone affected by my actions. Thank you for allowing me to speak and express my remorse. I hope one day Officer Nicole Blaskowski will find it in her heart to forgive me. Thank you.
It was a matter of millimeters, my will to survive, and by God's grace, that I'm able to be here to read my statement and not my husband on my behalf, Blaskowski said in a victim impact statement she read to the courtroom.
My name is Officer Nicole Blaskowski.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Alicia, over the last 3 years, I've had so many conversations with myself about what I would say to you. When I was finally given the opportunity, I've wanted to scream at you. I've wanted to ask you why. I wanted to tell you that I've forgiven you. But now that today is here, there's no possible way to put everything I felt in the last 3 years into words. Quite honestly, I don't even know if you're in a place to feel remorse for what you've done to me. But I want you to look around this room, and you can't see the others that are in the overflow room. But I know every single face here, and they know mine. I was more than just a cop. I'm a wife. I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, a best friend, a sister in Christ. I'm a part of the blue line, the white line, and the gold line. Even if you see me as just a cop, I was more than that too. I began my career in law enforcement when I was only 18 years old. My entire adult life, over half my life, was dedicated to serve, protect, mentor, and care for my community. There are people in this room that I have met on their darkest day, and because my career was more than just answering and closing calls, I followed up with them, came alongside them through their healing, and now they are here today to be with me as a friend. But the most important part of my life God has entrusted me with was to be a mother to the 3 of the most amazing, beautiful children. And even though I chose for them not to be here today, believe me when I say everyone in this room is advocating for them. A big part of me where a lot of anger still hides is when we were in negotiations for a plea deal almost 11 months ago. You refused to even budge from your time request because you would have felt it was your right to be released from prison to see why I graduate high school. But let me remind you, Alicia, you chose what you did to do in front of your child. You forfeited the right to be able to choose what milestones you feel you have the right to be a part of. My kids didn't ask for this. My kids were born into a life where both of their parents are cops, and they're so proud of us. They still and forever will be proud of us. When you were so worried about seeing your son graduate, You never considered you were leaving my 3 children with an empty chair at graduation. You didn't care that even though you get to still talk on the phone to Wyatt once a week, that mine would have to go a lifetime with only talking to me through their prayers. Quite frankly, it's my kids you have to provide your unending thanks to, because it was because of them I chose to fight for my life after you screamed at me, "I'm going to kill you," and shot me execution style in the back of the head. I went toe-to-toe with Satan in the pits of hell to survive, so I would return home to my children because it was only their faces I could see. And it is because of them you weren't spending the rest of your life in prison for ending mine. Even though there are so many more things I want to say to you, so many more questions I want to ask, I will end with this. I did not and still do not believe in the slightest that the defendant was having a mental health crisis. I believe she was under the influence of drugs. When I learned that the defendant was never brought in for a blood draw, devastated is an understatement. Anyone who works in law enforcement knows that amphetamines and stimulants have a short half-life, and time is imperative to get the blood draw completed. I strongly believe that this whole case would have been shut and closed months, if not years ago. There would have been no defense of mental illness. Your Honor, I've beaten myself up over this over and over and over again, thinking I missed something, blaming myself for her disarming me. I remember a DCI agent telling me in my second interview that I did everything right, textbook even, and I didn't believe her. It wasn't until recently, during trial prep this last March, that I had the opportunity to and was mentally prepared to listen to the audio recording. I went through the audio over and over with a copy of the Wisconsin DAT manual in hand, and the agent was right. I did everything by the book, step by step. There was nothing I could have done to prevent her from disarming and shooting me. I finally come to peace with that portion of the shooting. It took me 2.5 years to learn and believe that none of this was my fault. That's a long time to carry such a heavy burden. That's a long time to punish myself and carry the blame for the decisions the defendant made. And that's a prison sentence of its own. Your Honor, my life has changed drastically since I was shot. I went from being a healthy, active, fit 34-year-old to needing to be on 5 daily prescription medications every day. 1 for anxiety, 1 for depression, 1 for post-traumatic stress disorder and mood stabilization, 1 to sleep, and 1 to manage headaches. I have 4 as-needed medications, 1 for migraines, 1 for panic attacks, and 2 for pain when my shoulder and neck lock up. These are some of the injuries I was left with after the shooting, some of which I still live with today. Injuries from the gunshot wound to my head. For the first 3 weeks following the shooting, I was under constant monitoring because I would constantly fall because of the extreme vertigo symptoms. I had to be monitored and physically supported while going to the bathroom and using the shower. I didn't have the ability to drive for 3 months. Because of this, and 5-day-a-week appointments in Green Bay and Sturgeon Bay, between occupational therapy, vestibular therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, and behavioral health, my husband needed to take 3 months off work to not only support me mentally, but to be with me through it all. I required plastic surgery to repair the damage to my head, but will have permanent hair loss and disfigurement on my scalp for the rest of my life. A reminder I see every day when I look in the mirror. My last CT scan showed that there was still metal debris from the bullet in my head. I've developed tinnitus and still have hearing loss in my right ear. There were injuries to my shoulder because during the altercation prior to the shooting, my right shoulder was dislocated. During the dislocation, my labrum was torn and required 5 anchors to be placed. A chunk of bone was broken off the head of my humerus, and my bicep tendon was torn. Because of the head injury, I had to wait 9 months to have surgical repairs done on my shoulder to make sure I could tolerate the anesthesia. That was 9 months of living with a broken bone and shoulder that would regularly fall out of its socket. For several months prior to and after the surgery, about 6 months in total, I had 2-hour physical therapy sessions in Green Bay 5 days a week to regain the strength in my neck, back, and shoulder. The mental injuries. Since the shooting, I was diagnosed with depression, PTSD, anxiety, attention deficit disorder subsequent to PTSD. I get extreme panic attacks that come out of nowhere with no notice. These result in me ending up on the floor in the fetal position, unable to breathe or be reasoned with. For someone who has always been in control of regulating my emotions, the lack of control I have over these panic attacks disturbs me to my core.
Given the seriousness of the assault on a law enforcement officer, the court found it necessary for the accused to address the court before the sentence was delivered.
Another of the sentencing objectives I have to look at is the punishment of the defendant, Alicia Culkin. As I've already stated, she's already been confined for almost 3 years. She has been in my court numerous times over that period. As far as what I have been able to observe, she was shown to be, in my courtroom, cooperative, engaged, polite throughout this entire process. Again, she advises that her addiction to illegal drugs has been alleviated because of her long confinement. But there has to be further punishment than just the confinement in the O'Connell County Jail. She has been convicted of 4 separate offenses. Number 1, attempted first-degree intentional homicide. Removed the firearm and squeezed the trigger 3 times. Number 2, resisting an officer. Number 3, a battery to a police officer. And 4, disarming a peace officer. Certainly further punishment is warranted for the chaos and injuries which Alyssa Culkin caused on August 6, 2021. Rehabilitation is another objective. Alicia Culkin certainly needs correctional treatment. And even she says that she would like to be placed in a resource center where her mental issues, past addiction issues, can be addressed. There's no question in my mind that those treatment availabilities can most effectively be provided to her if she is confined. I make no determination, however, as to where she is confined. That is determined by the Department of Corrections. Deterrence of others. We learn at a very early age, even as a child, that with authority, with parents, with teachers, with superiors, that we show respect and we do as we are told until we can rationalize those decisions by ourselves. All Alicia Culkin had to do was listen to Officer Blaskowski. Calm down. Sit down. Stop. Please stop. Officer Blaskowski's Alicia Culkin's failure to do that escalated the situation to what we are facing today. Further, as stated previously, our officers, our law enforcement officials are there to serve and protect, and I'm damn proud of the job that is being done in O'Connell County. by all of our agencies. Police, county. They are there to serve and protect. They are not there to harm anyone. So let this sentence that I will give to this defendant deter others to recognize that when you receive a just directive from a law enforcement officer, that you pay attention to it and you abide by that direction. Another of the objectives I should consider is what is called within our system restorative justice. Pretty hard to do in this case. Pretty hard to do. Officer Blaskowski has to work with the results of this incident mentally and physically for the remainder of her life. As will Alicia Koken in serving additional confinement time. We don't have any excuses here for what happened. None. Because of her abusing her medications and THC, she caused herself to have some type of a psychotic experience. However, she still had the mental ability and judgment to call 911. She had the ability to explain to the officer what she believed was occurring. She had the ability to restrain the officer in wanting to do it. And then, of course, at the end, we have the 3 intentional shots from Officer Blaskowski's side. Yes, this incident is most aggravating as it concerns the gravity of the offense. So the court must impose a sentence that will be consistent with those sentencing factors. Certainly, the court cannot consider probation because that would depreciate the offense, number one. Number two, the court is going to give a sentence to Alicia Koken that I believe is the minimum amount of time that she would have to be confined in order to achieve a fairness as to her punishment and also to take advantage of her rehabilitation. As to count 1 of the information, first-degree intentional homicide attempt, I sentenced Alicia Koken to 13 years in the Wisconsin State Prison, 6 years of extended supervision. Count 2, resisting an officer, 1 year of initial confinement, 2 years of extended supervision. Count 3, battery to a law enforcement officer, 1 year of initial confinement, 2 years of extended supervision. Count 4, disarming a peace officer, 1 year of initial confinement, 2 years of extended supervision. These are 4 separate counts for 4 separate cases that were aggravating as to the injuries caused to the defendant, injuries caused to Officer Blaskowski. All counts to be served consecutively for a total sentence of 16 years initial confinement, 12 years of extended supervision, with this defendant receiving credit for 1,054 days of jail time. She is not eligible for the challenge incarceration program. She is not eligible for the substance abuse program. Alicia Koken shall have no contact with Nicole Blaskowski, her family, or residents as conditions of her supervision. She will enter into, participate in, and successfully complete any assessments, evaluations, AODA assessments, treatment programs as directed by the department.
Alicia Cocken was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the shooting of Officer Nicole Blaskowski. On January 27, 2014, Lydia Avils Mook and her son, Alexis Xavier Mook, were tragically killed by Marcus Lashley Jr. during a home invasion in Ohio. Witness testimony was key in uncovering the truth behind this disturbing crime, providing essential details and insights into what had occurred.
The defendant previously has pled guilty. There was a stipulated sentence as part of that plea agreement that there was a joint recommendation of life in prison with parole eligibility after 30 full years as to each count to be served consecutively. That is a stipulated sentence under 2953.08. Is that correct? Ms. Snyder?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is that correct, Mr. Scarcella?
Yes, Your Honor.
No pre-sentence investigation report was ordered. However, by agreement of the state and the defense requested that this be set for a sentencing hearing so that they could introduce certain evidence or reports into the court record. At this time, Mr. Grant and Ms. Snyder, did you have any witnesses you wanted to call or any documents you wanted to offer?
Yes, Your Honor, we have several documents. We have an allocution and one witness we'd like to ask.
Okay, and I will let you call whatever witness you want to call.
We're just going to ask him to let the court know about the course of conduct. So just
I'll say that Marcus Lashley has been an inmate in the Ashtabula County Jail since I believe February of 2014. Since that time, he's had 10 disciplinary violations. He had disciplinary actions taken against him in which he was placed in lockup or some sort of restriction for all those 10 violations. When I went through and reviewed his disciplinary record, he had his last disciplinary action taken against him in April of 2015. He's had 282 days in the Ashtabula County Jail without any disciplinary action taken.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to ask me?
I don't deal daily with the inmates as the correction officers do, but I can say that I haven't had any reports of any difficulty or any problems with Mr. Lashley. In fact, I did have a positive report from him recently in which there was a fight up in his housing unit or his pod, and Marcus Lashley broke up that fight for the officers.
Okay. Mr. Scarcella or Mr. Deckard, any questions for the lieutenant?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further on behalf of the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. The psychiatrist for the determination of whether he needs to be medicated. And Dr. Keaton came out and spoke with him and determined that he did need to be medicated. And through the efforts of Dr. Keaton, Dr. Carpwitch, who I'll mention in a minute, and Dr. Whiteley, he has been medicated. And since the time he was medicated, his persona has changed 100%. He's now been easy to deal with. He's been cooperative. He's been amiable. We've just simply seen a total change in his whole ability to relate to us and relate to others and ability to conduct himself. Through discussions with Marcus's family, through records we've reviewed in terms of his history and background, we've learned a number of things about Marcus. First of all, it's pretty clear from the records that we've reviewed and the interviews we've conducted is that Marcus unfortunately had a very dysfunctional upbringing. His parents both suffered from significant substance abuse issues. In fact, at the time Marcus was arrested, his mother was incarcerated for substance abuse issues. His father, in addition to the substance abuse issues, had issues with mental health, and certainly that was an issue as well. To exacerbate that problem, Marcus had cognitive limitations growing up. The records clearly relate that early on he had speech difficulties in terms of expressing himself and difficulties in comprehending other people's language towards him and what they were basically trying to tell him. He largely grew up unsupervised, rather. He grew up on the streets because his parents were dealing, and not that they didn't say love him, but because they were dealing with their own issues, they weren't really able to devote the type of attention to Marcus that he should have had, and to help him deal with some of these cognitive issues that he's developed over the years. Marcus started using drugs at a very early age. We've documented that at age as early as 13, 14 years old, he was already consistently using various drugs. I believe to some extent that
Excuse me, slow down just a second. 13 or 14, you started using what?
Number of different drugs, which I suspect was in many ways stuff he'd seen his parents doing, as well as perhaps his own attempt to self-medicate some of his own issues. Dr. Weinkoop, a neuropsychologist, evaluated Marcus and indicates that there's a significant chance that he has what's called an auditory processing disorder. And that means he has issues with verbal comprehension, reasoning, and verbal expression, meaning that essentially that it's difficulty communicating with others, as well as understanding what other people are saying to him at various points in time. During the period of 2011 to 2013, Marcus was in prison. And during the period of time he was in prison, he was on various psychiatric medications, mood stabilizers and antipsychotic medications. And it certainly appeared from the records that he was responding well to those medications. When he got out in 2013, he stopped taking those medications. And it's our belief because largely he didn't have access to them or wasn't being supervised and required to take them at that point in time, even though theoretically he was on post-release control at the time. And when he stopped taking those medications, again, he reverted back to the use of drugs as a form of self-medication. He was taking considerable, he was smoking marijuana, I don't know, I read in one of the reports he was smoking as many as 40 blunts a day. Literally in a day most of the time through drug usage. And again, I think it was largely self-medication because he wasn't taking the mood stabilizers that were helping him while he was in jail, and probably mood stabilizers he should have been on for a long time. And I believe that this whole issue with the drugs and with the failure to take his medications contributed in large part to his conduct in this particular case when he came out to Ashton Guild. And certainly, Your Honor, we can't in any way condone or justify anything that happened that day, and we're not going to try to. But I would indicate, Your Honor, that Marcus didn't go to the clone home on that particular day with the intent of taking someone's life. Unfortunately, they went into the house, they were armed, and obviously good things don't happen when you walk into someone else's house with a gun. But I don't think they anticipated that the Colognes would react aggressively, which I think they had every right to do. And we're not criticizing them in any way what they did to them.
The defendant testified during the trial, but he understood that no expression of regret could absolve him of the heinous acts he had committed.
Anything you would like to say?
Yes, sir. What's that?
You can if you would like. Yes, sir.
I was going to write something, but I just wanted to say to the Honorable Judge Harris, I'd like to thank you for being patient with me. And to tell you that I am grateful to have a judge that's smart and that's righteous and as fair as you are. For almost 2 years I sat still. I had a lot of time to think, to cry, also like to suffer, and to change from the horrible person I was to who I am now, and to pray about the sad sins I committed. And I know there's nothing I can do to bring back their family, but to say I'm really sorry and what my life excluded from society, I shall pay. But I do want to go on and say that I'm not a bad person. I just made bad decisions. And I'm not a cold-hearted killer. I was just as frightened as they were And I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just hoping for peace and forgiveness. And even though the family may never forgive me, it's okay because I forgive them for not forgiving me. And last, on a positive note, I'd like to thank my lawyers for fighting for me. I'd like to thank my doctors for listening to me. Thank the COs for helping me. And thank all my family and my loved ones for supporting me and not giving up on me. And I'm sorry. And my kids and Jesus Christ, I shall live through from this day on. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Mr. Lashley, just to make sure we're clear, you understand what sentence I'm required to impose upon you today, correct?
Yes.
And what sentence do I have to impose upon you?
60 years to life, right?
Correct. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Grant, on behalf of the defense?
No, you're right.
Mr. Scarsella?
Abeles was my sister-in-law, and Alexis Smoke was my nephew. I'm also thanking the Lord that my other nephew was dramatically traumatized. Benny is still here with us today. I am writing you this letter to tell you how the murders of Marcus Lavery and Stephon Mathers' actions and decisions impacted my life on January 27, 2014. It has almost been 2 long years. On January 27, 2014, Marcus and Stephon made the intentional decisions to go into Lydia's home by kicking in her door, only to find out that they supposedly had their own house. Marcus and Stephon then didn't decide to turn around out of Lydia's home and run. They continued to look in her eyes and murder her and her kids. To be that selfish and take away someone's life can only mean you don't care. She had to watch her mother die slowly. Erica had to watch her mother die slowly too, and ask for Lydia for months. And her grandkids. She died being heartbroken. My wife Erica got a lot more unstable now, having lost 3 family members in a matter of a year and a couple months. I have to stay strong because she needed me more than ever. I had watched Erica fall apart for 2 years. This family has fell apart. Erica is not the woman that she was. This family isn't the family it was. The mother. Sorry. Mr. Harris, I could keep going on. I probably could write a book. But what it has done to my family. But I'm just asking you to give us justice today and give him what he deserves.
The overriding purpose is to punish offenders and to protect the public from future crimes. The courts looked at the recidivism factors, with this defendant having previously been incarcerated. Recidivism would be considered likely. The courts looked at the seriousness factors. They don't get more serious than 2 aggravated murders. The court finds that consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crimes and to punish the offender, and that consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of the offender's conduct and to the danger the defendant poses to the public. Also, pursuant to the plea agreement, this is a stipulated sentence under 2953.08. So, pursuant to that plea agreement and pursuant to state law, on count 1, the defendant will be sentenced to a term of 30 years to life in prison. On count 3, which is also aggravated murder, both of these are under 2903.01A. He additionally is sentenced to a term of 30 years to life, and that those 2 sentences shall be served consecutively to each other. So, Mr. Lashley, as you correctly stated, we're getting 60 years to life. Mr. Scarcella, it is my understanding, I have no alternative but to give him jail time credit for the time that he's been in since he was originally arrested.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And we will calculate it. Do you have a day's calculation?
I do not have a number of days calculation, but I can have that for you shortly from the sheriff's office.
There will be no disagreement on that. He
No,
was,
Your Honor.
he was arrested on what day?
February 11th,
Does that sound correct?
We have no objection to that date, Your Honor.
Okay. So the credit back to February 11th of 2014.
Correct.
And I have to give him that under state law. He is not eligible to earn any days of to earn credit to reduce his prison sentence because these are mandatory prison sentences. He is not eligible for probation. We will sign the agreed entry on the court costs, the deferral of the collection. There was no request or order for restitution, but the victims are entitled to the victims' crime procedures. Correct, Mr. Scarcella?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Now, under state law as it presently exists, after you have completed serving the 60 years, I don't know what other sentences may be imposed upon you in other courts. In the event of 60 years from now, the parole board and the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, and I'm just assuming the law stays the same, but generally the law changes. If they would ever let you out, and you would be well into your 80s, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
You would have to be under parole supervision under current law for a minimum of 5 years. But I have no control over that. That's between you and the state, and whatever the General Assembly does in between now and then. I am required to advise you. First of all, any bond that was set that was never posted is previously canceled, so you will not be released. I am required to advise you that you have the right to appeal this court's conviction and sentence. You have 30 days from today's date to file your appeal with the 11th District Court of Appeals. You have a right to a free court-appointed lawyer to represent you in the Court of Appeals. And you have a right to a free transcript of all court proceedings that could be prepared for you at no cost. You understand those rights?
Yes, sir.
Anything further, Mr. Grant, on behalf of the defendant?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, we have a lot of people in the courtroom.